so much for this interview. My name is Zantonio. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Oh, thank you.
And the first question is, so how did you guys come up with this idea of this virtual tour?
We miss touring too much, really. I mean, with this pandemic going on, you're not allowed to travel anywhere. You're not to do shows. You're not allowed to do anything, really. So it's and touring is the main thing that we do as a band. I mean, playing live is something that you're supposed to do when you're a band. It's like for us, it was always more about touring than it was about releasing records. So we just missed touring too much, and we wanted to create something that would emulate touring as much as possible, which is why we're now doing this tour in the way that we're doing it. I mean, like you've seen other bands, they do live streams and stuff, and they play one show, and then that's it. One show is not a tour. You wanna if you're gonna play if you're gonna do a tour, it has to be more than one show. And I think we planned for like 20 shows and stuff, but we couldn't afford to do the 20 shows. So we had to settle for 6 to begin with. So that is the reason, really. And I mean, we've done, recorded performances and stuff on television and whatever. And it's not, it's not like, as soon as there's not a live crowd in there, it's not a live show. So we knew that we wanted to have something that would allow us to kind of address a crowd and to get feedback from a crowd and to all of that. So that's the reason why we're playing various cities, is so that we can address a crowd and go, hello London, for instance, or hello Sao Paulo. And that way then the Sao Paulo people, they can respond and go, we're good, or they can scream, play faster, or you guys suck, or whatever. And then we're up and running. That's your live show.
And we love to know that São Paulo was included in this tour. But I want to ask you, what was the criteria for choosing the cities?
Well, Sao Paulo's biggest, apart from having tons of passionate fans and that we've had great shows there, is that it's situated in South America. When I said we were doing... we wanted to do more shows, but I mean, since the production costs are so high for each show, or I mean, at least in the way that we want to do it, which is with showmanship and style and grace, then we want to have the shows be what we want them to be like. So then that'll cost a little bit of money, and then we have to, front that up. And then we decided that, okay, maybe we can narrow it down to this then. So 6 shows. And then when we decided on the 6 shows, we had, we had all these cities on paper that like, hey, we've had great shows there, we want to play there. And then these are the ones that stuck, because you wanted it to be sort of like a small world tour. So we also wanted to have the homecoming gig sort of in Stockholm, but we also wanted to, I mean, we've started tours in Berlin before. So we start in Berlin and then the routing is going up to London, playing there. And then the rest of it is like, we wanted a North America show, so we're doing New York. We wanted a South America show, so we're doing Sao Paulo. We wanted to play Australia, so we're doing Sydney. And then we're doing the homecoming show, which is Stockholm.
Since you play the shows from Sweden, you play in different time zones. How do you deal with this? Because some shows could happen in strange times, strange hours.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the weirdest one was going to be, I mean, some of them won't even be that weird. I mean, like, I think we're playing at 8. The Berlin show is, I think, at 8 o'clock in the evening for us. Then the London show is an hour later, which is 9. And then we're doing New York, which is 1 in the morning. And that's like a regular show time, really.
Yeah.
And then the week after, I think we're doing Sydney at 11 in the morning. So that's like right after breakfast. That might be weird. But then, and then Sao Paulo is kind of like New Yorkish time. So I think we're playing at midnight for Sao Paulo.
Yeah.
I mean, our midnight and your 8 o'clock in the evening. And then the last one is obviously then Stockholm, which is the same time. So, so it'll be fine. I mean, they're not even, I thought it was going to be way worse. I mean, we're going to have to find some worse hours for the next leg of the tour.
And we will play some new songs in these web shows.
If we're playing unreleased songs?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can even go in. I mean, I don't know if that's been released yet, but we're released. The info is available to anyone who wants it, but I don't know if you can actually go in yet and vote for the songs. But you will be able to even vote for unreleased songs when you want to when you vote for songs. So it'll say right next to the song, like if it'll say, whatever, See Through Head, then you can vote for that, like if that's your favorite Hive song. And then it might be there might be a title like Stick Up or Paint a Picture, and then next to those it'll say Unreleased Song, and then you can vote for those as well. So we will both play unreleased songs that we're deciding ourselves which ones to play, and if by popular vote some of the unreleased tracks make it onto the set list, then we will play those as well. So yeah, definitely there'll be some unreleased tracks played.
Yeah, I ask you because the last studio album from the Hives was released 8 years ago. So can we expect a new album?
Yeah, I mean, it's embarrassing, that bit, but it's what it is. It hasn't been for lack of songs, that's for sure. I mean, right now we have 2 full records ready to rehearse and record, and we were actually when the pandemic hit in sort of in April, we were actually going off to record some stuff for the new records. So it's been it kind of hit right when we were supposed to start, gearing up to make records again. But what's happened after that is that we've been able to sort of make these records a bit better. And like I said, almost 2 finished records, and then we're working on a 3rd one as well. Since now there's time to do that. So, but I mean, it's we can't go anywhere to record it. I mean, we can only record in our home studios, and I mean, maybe that's a cool record too, but it's not what we wanted to do right now. We wanted to, record these records in the studios that we feel are the best ones suited for the job. So that's what we're going to do. So and that all, that's all up to the pandemic gods, if you will. Like whenever we're allowed to go to wherever we want to go to record these records.
Yes. And what about the pandemic? I want to ask you: do you think that how can you imagine the future of live music after the pandemic?
I was kind of pessimistic in the beginning. Like I said, when the pandemic stops, maybe a live show where you go and see all these other people is not the first thing that people will queue up for. And then I met someone who said, "You really think so?" I think it's going to be exactly the opposite. People are going to want to go to these shows right away because I would. And then it took me a second to go, well, I want that too. That's what's going to happen. So, I mean, what you're really longing for is being, sweaty in a room with a bunch of other people listening to great music. That's as soon as the doors open, as soon as I'm allowed to do that, that's what I'm going to do, hug people and go to live shows. That's what I'm going to do as soon as this pandemic stops. So, yeah, I think people will go right off the bat, they will go to live shows. I think so. I mean, they're kind of, there's people already sort of doing it. I mean, they're doing these shows with like 50 people or, they're doing this and that. But I think as soon as you're allowed to go full throttle again, as soon as your respective government will say, you're allowed to go full throttle, you're allowed to go to these live shows and do whatever you did before, then I think people will go right away.
Okay, because I think that there's some huge changes in the music market from now. I'm afraid of it.
Yeah. I mean, there's big changes, but on the other hand, I mean, what we're doing really is rock and roll. And rock and roll, you can play rock and roll in front of 20 drunk people in a room, and it'll be great. So for us, that won't really change. I mean, but yeah, if the music market and whatever, like clubs disappear because they're going under because of financial pressure, and if like all of that is a shame, but it's like we can't do anything about it really. I mean, that's up to governments to do that, or crowdfunding or whatever you want to throw at it. But yeah, so that's a huge shame. But on the other hand, like this is something that's never happened before. But as for rock and roll or for punk music and rock music and stuff like that, I think that there's always, until you invent something else that's funnier, then this is what we got to work with.
Okay, I have just two more questions, maybe some personal questions for me. The first one is about your guitars. You love Telecaster guitars, but you have a guitar that is so beautiful, that Arsonet guitar. How was this guitar? It looks like a mix of Telecaster and Echo guitar and the Firebirds.
Yeah. Well, the thing was that, when we used to rehearse in our rehearsal space in Fagersta, long time ago, there was this guy who came to Fagersta, our little town in Sweden. There's only 12,000 people living in this town. And he came to play. He was a hockey player, and he came to play for the local team here in Fagersta. And he didn't know anyone, in Fagersta. So he would go to the rehearsal spaces where we rehearse and other bands, and he would just sit on the couch and listen to these bands rehearse. And then maybe, I think, he moved out of town, I guess, and stuff. And a couple of years later, I was driving next to a club in Stockholm, and I almost ran him over at a crosswalk. And he was carrying a pizza, and I almost ran him over with our touring van. And I went out, hey, how are you doing? And he was like, yeah, I'm good. I build guitars nowadays. So then I walked with him up to his workshop, and then he could, like, it was a school for guitar building. And he said, yeah, if you want to design a guitar, I can build it for you. And that was his first electric that he ever built. And then, so I got to